Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show Review with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Harvard, Miles Davis, the Beatles, love, film, cinema, so much more. It is my pleasure to bring this expansive, this cerebral, this deeply intellectual chat with the general manager of Drink of Boston, Ms. Ezra Star. We sat down during the San Antonio Cocktail Conference and chatted about everything you could possibly think about. The philosophy behind working in an amazing bar, what it should look like, what it should feel like, what it should and shouldn't have, what fortunes life gives us, traveling, and so much more. So, without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this great chat with Ezra Star.
Well, actually, I never thought that I would end up in education at all.
Really?
I didn't expect I was going to go do that stuff and focus on medicine ever. I always thought I was going to be a musician or a chef, because I grew up with my family, and the first books I ever read were English and French cookbooks.
Yeah.
And so all my base knowledge as a kid was books just on cooking. And my mom used to cook. She was a caterer, and my grandmother and I would cook together all the time. So I never thought I would go into science at all.
Where does the music piece come in?
So I grew up just playing music. My mom's a musician.
No way.
I played a few instruments, guitar, piano, saxophone, drums, violin.
We play the same exact instruments.
That's awesome.
I like this a lot.
Yeah.
Are you a tenor, baritone, or alto?
I played tenor, and alto, and a C melody.
C melody, really?
You know the C melody?
Oh.
It's like a alto size with a curved neck like a tenor.
Oh, really?
It's a cool...
I've never seen one before.
They're beautiful. They're hard to find.
Imagine. But suffice to say, were you in band in school?
I was in a lot of bands. I went to an arts-focused high school, which is how I was able to finish so quickly.
Oh, that's incredible.
And they did a lot of work. Like we didn't have a sports team. The big people on campus was the musicians.
That's a way better thing.
It was way better.
I would rather worship those.
It was the only way I could be cool.
Yeah. See, I never had the opportunity.
Yeah.
I moved around far too much, and I played an alto sax.
Yeah.
I think I just tried to get into jazz bands just so I could play guitar and look a little cool.
Yeah.
That was the only
I think that's
reason.
why everybody switched from saxophone to guitar.
That's
to look
see,
cooler.
right?
Yeah.
To get to some kind of attention, some kind of
Specific
accolade.
attention.
Of some sex somewhere.
Mm-hmm. In
right?
some way.
Some way. So when you talk about music at that point, it sounds like a pretty easy path that perhaps you would have pursued it, but maybe going into your teens a bit, or what were some of the more influential bands or performers for you?
David Bowie, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like, I love the way that he could transmute and become something different.
Sure.
Which I think has had a huge impact on my life, actually.
Yeah.
It's one of the ways that I see bars and being behind a bar is shifting and transitioning and becoming somebody different for each guest and taking on elements of what they're looking for in order to take care of them.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. It's being adaptive.
Adaptive.
He did it in a fashion-forward way, but
Yeah.
yet reinventing himself. You know?
Well, he did it with the music too. He would take all of his idols and he would express them in his own way.
Yeah.
And I kind of took the same thing when I was approaching how to learn how to be behind the bars. Take all the elements of the people that I looked up to, like Kazuo Ueda's shaking style, and like Misty Kalkofen, her interest in spirits and sustainability, and like all those people that really influenced me, and then took
melange,
it together.
is that maybe the word for it?
Yeah.
To become an amalgam of these finer
I think amalgamation,
metals.
yeah, most likely.
Anybody? So Bowie, that's really intriguing. So I want to go one more. There's another one for you that's quite.
There were so many. Actually, a weird one is Fiona Apple.
Really? That's so weird. She's a great musician.
She's an amazing musician, and the way that she could build rhythms off of the way that she played piano was remarkable to me. So being adaptive within a rhythm, I guess that also came across in making drinks. I never even thought about this. It's awesome.
It's a very interesting. Food is this way. Flavors and moving and
exactly
kind of helping it evolve with flavor, with heat, with time and place, right?
So this also, I think, probably helped me with chemistry quite a bit. I was really shit at chemistry the first time I tried it, and then I ended up taking all my chemistry classes at the same time. I kind of cheated my way in and ended up taking 101, 201, 301, and 401 the same semester.
Wow.
And then I got to do it the next semester because I had already done it. And by being that engrossed and that immersed in the world of chemistry, I started to understand that it was moving and visual and a lot like music and sound, the way that sound plays in your head and you can hear the notes and the melodies bouncing off itself and the waves moving is the same way that chemistry works. It's like you can see those molecules folding and unfolding and dancing together in almost the same way. So I try to bring that also. I think that's the main part that I bring with me to being behind the bar and running bars is trying to see where that dance is playing and how those connections are made and where they come apart and where they go back together. It's so really helpful.
I always look, maybe this might be the only person that can really share this. There's a few musicians rather more than a few musicians that are behind the bar, but I always think about a C major triad, let's say, or C minor triad. You just shift that third, right? Drinks to me, the perfect drinks are 3 ingredients, much like a triad. Either they're bright and light and acidic, and then that is a C major triad, where you shift it just a little bit darker with some bitters or perhaps an amari, and then it turns into that minor chord. So I always think about balance.
It's funny you say that.
Like
That's actually the way that I think about food and palates entirely. I see a scale. I see a scale in my mind, and you can tell a chef's cooking style based on where they are within that scale, where their melody plays. Like some people go really low bass, like earthy flavors, and then up to the brighter, higher, like high acids and things like that, or like bright fish and things like that. Right. And the perfect one is the balance in between. So a scale that's a little bigger, tritones.
All right, we're gonna dive into this then a little bit more. This is exactly how I think about flavor.
Great.
I think 3 is easiest because conceptually you can do 2, but it's not as grand as things don't interplay.
Well, 2 is boring.
Yeah, it can absolutely be.
It can be really helpful as a transition or a way of. I mean, sometimes you want to like McDonald's cheeseburger, and that's like 2 notes.
Totally right.
Entirely
power chord, right?
Yeah. And it's great, and it's exactly what you want in that moment. But something that's lasting and memorable tends to have many tones to it.
Of course. So the thing when I think about cocktails, when I think about music, I would take something like. It's like Miles Davis, right, on vinyl. Okay, so ultra mid, beautiful, and it's gonna be not too dark, not too bright. It's never brittle. It's right in the middle. It's that soft spot. It's the perfect unctuous, creamy daiquiri, for instance, right? Yeah. But then you think about pop's fine, but like Katy Perry, how that's so pristine and sparkly and almost brittle, and that is like a cocktail of which is too acidic and has no real soul to it.
But it also has a flavor of its own. And I'm glad you said Miles Davis because somebody asked him how he got his tone in his trumpet. Do you ever hear this interview? One of the greatest interviews ever. I don't remember who it was that did it, but he said the way that he got his tone was when he would play, a little piece of skin would fall between his lips. And that piece of skin would reverberate specifically in a way that made his tone sound more earthy.
Oh my God.
So I think of cocktails kind of a similar way. Yeah. You don't want a perfectly balanced cocktail. It's boring. You can't remember that. It's when it's thrown off just slightly by something you don't expect that it becomes an actual delicious, perfect thing.
That's amazing. Sometimes, like even in the old Beatles recording, you'll hear just one of the notes is slightly flat on the piano.
Well, that's why they're so good, right? They had to do all of it immediately when they first started, and so they would just go directly in. They do 1 or 2 takes, and that's it. Right. And that they put out the album, like Rubber Soul and Revolver. I think they put a little more effort into that because they had to go into 4 tracks and 4 tracks. And
they had finally kind of exploring the lines and the recording.
But all the albums before that was just them raw, and they were so well rehearsed by being in Berlin that when they came to the table to play, they could just do it. And I feel like behind a bar, it's got to be the same way. Once you practice your scales, which are the understanding the spirits, the way that you move behind the bar, you're shaking and stirring. You can't even have to think about that anymore. It's got to be second nature. Always knowing how to hold the bottle. Once you have those things down and like your tools for getting guests to talk, and talk about themselves and figuring out how to find those cues. Once those things are all together, you don't think about them anymore because you've practiced them at home, and those are your scales. Each one is a different kind of instrument that you've got to master.
And then you go on to the modes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and then you expand. See, this is the kind of the key set of principles about what is it? Being a sensei.
Yeah.
Right. So you have your person that studies with you doing a rudimentary task for so long, and even if they think it's boring or repetitive, ultimately it builds this amazing foundation. It's the absence of ego in Japanese culture. It's just a matter of duty, in a sense, right?
Well, also there's the point where when it's boring and repetitive is when you're learning the most, because that's the point where you are going beyond the act itself and starting to see how to expand it. So so many times in my career I've thought, okay, as a bartender, I mean, okay, it's time for me to go get a new job, go do this other thing.
Yeah.
And then I wait a little bit, and as I wait, I see that actually I'm growing and I'm much further along than I thought, but I'm also not at the point that I think I am.
Right.
So it's almost like, because I haven't moved on to other things behind a bar, like gone and like worked for somebody else yet, or anything like that. I've had the same job for a very long time now. I've become so much better at what I do because I've gone through that boring part.
Right.
And now I can actually do other jobs much easier.
In the doldrums, but yet it ends up being some value
you're on a
there.
plateau, but you don't realize it has a slight incline.
Interesting. So I'm going to say impressed. I love this chat so far. This is fucking brilliant. Thank you for that. And I'm going to take it a little bit of a tangent before we talk back about what this transition looks like from being in the lab and being so scientific, which you still apply every day, of course. But let's talk about your sense of, and this isn't religion, but your sense of connection to the world, right?
Okay.
This is something I'm interested in.
I am a very religious person, actually.
Are you? Any particular
I'm a
denomination?
Buddhist.
A Buddhist?
I'm a very practicing Buddhist.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
How has given we're surrounded by a lot of noise, almost literally here in this room, but there are a lot of people against each other all the time. It's this friction for some reason. It feels like the world somehow is being pulled apart by the people that inhabit it. You being seemingly very centered, how is your impression of the world changed maybe in the past 5 years when it seemingly has become more contentious and we are at each other's throats?
Somebody said something really amazing to me recently, or I think I saw it on TV or something. I can't remember. But this guy was saying that we're better off now than we have been in a long time.
Yeah.
And it may seem like everything's falling apart, but just a few years ago, there was World War II when literally the entire world was attacking itself.
Right.
And people were
falling
dying
apart.
on a daily basis, and things were literally falling apart as well. And I think no matter what's happening, everything is always falling apart. Things are always collapsing on themselves. Entropy, things like that. In chemistry are an example of it. In Buddhism, you talk about the constant dying of nature of everything and rebirth, samsara,
Sure.
and like the circle of death and rebirth.
A continuum, right?
Yeah, continuum. Yeah. So you see that stuff, and the great thing about Buddhism is it has taught me that the most incredible and powerful thing a person can do is just choose to not do anything and just sit in one place and not watch a TV, not listen to music, not be in the world in any way except for in that one place.
Yeah.
And I get overwhelmed pretty easily. I have a hard time in crowds, which is why I work behind a barrier that prevents them from coming to me.
Right.
And whenever I get overwhelmed, I just try to go back to that point and choose to be in one place and choose to not participate, I guess.
That's a very interesting
when I was in school, we talked about doing surgery, and surgeons, I'm very curious about them because I wanted to be one. It's like the perfect job in the world. You get to use your hands, think about things, and interact with people, ideally, right?
in a very
bizarre,
way.
literally, yeah. But imagine you're a surgeon and you accidentally make a mistake, and that person starts to bleed out or something, right? You're gonna freak out. You are.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And it's something that is bound to happen. And so what they do is they take a moment, they count to 10, and then they go back in and do it.
Yeah.
Right? And what we do behind the bar is a lot less intense than that.
Yeah.
But we have similar issues where sometimes there'll be too many people in the crowd, or you've got too many things coming at you at once, and you just have to take that moment away and come back to where you are.
Right.
yeah, I guess that's my approach to it. It's very loose. I apologize.
No, I think it's pretty sound. You know, did you find Buddhism or did Buddhism find you?
I kind of grew up with it.
Were your parents or the parental?
Yeah, 100%. And I grew up in a very Buddhist part of. When I lived in Boulder, Colorado, there's a lot of Buddhists there.
Oh, I didn't realize.
So it was. I was interacting with them quite a bit, and then beatniks.
Yeah.
I read all the beat literature. Met a bunch of them because they all actually lived in Boulder at
Really?
one point or another.
It's expensive too, man. Being in Boulder, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
sometimes you don't think about.
It wasn't expensive when I lived there.
Oh, was it?
Now
Oh.
it's really expensive.
It's really.
But yeah, you know, I find this really helpful. I find it's a mental. It's a very religion. It's a real religion.
Sure.
There are practices and things like that. But I find that the ideas and thoughts behind it are really helpful.
Like a framework, perhaps.
Yeah.
Do you accept other religions just
100%.
as equal?
I'm not very good at them because I think some of the concepts are a little foreign to me.
Right.
But you know, I appreciate all of them quite a bit.
Did you
Judaism
travel much
especially.
as a Judaism?
Especially, yeah, I'm a big fan.
Were you pretty well? It sounds like ultimately you have many multicultural.
Yeah, I mean, my
right?
family is very interesting background-wise. Like, my mom spoke multiple languages. My dad spoke multiple languages, and I grew up in Venezuela, and then in Arkansas and Colorado. So, like, just some
It's a little
influences.
different, yeah.
But I think I have a very small family. It's like just my mom, my brother, and I essentially outside of Venezuela, and so my resources for things were very minimal as a kid. So I had to pull from everybody else. I didn't have grandparents to find history, so I had to read about history. I didn't have like aunts and uncles.
You had to
really.
supplement.
Yeah, so I think learning about other people was the fast way to fill in those gaps.
See, it's so strange. It's striking similarity. Like same thing for me.
Yeah.
Culture was the thing that made me feel like I had a family. And
Right,
perhaps
exactly.
music and perhaps talking to people. That's a way to feel connective, you know. I think Buddhism does that same thing. Is nature a good way to reset for you? And do you think that it's a good way for people to reset?
I think it's a good way for a lot of people to reset. I have a hard time getting to nature.
Yeah.
My mom lives in the middle of nature.
Yeah.
In the mountains of Colorado.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful, but living there was frustrating for me because I was so isolated.
Yeah.
I need other people and I need other ideas in order to feel stable and confident and growing and a part of the world. So for me, I tend to find myself most at peace when there are more people around me.
Yeah, me too. I take a bunch of social elements and people, but then when it comes down to it, I'd rather just sit at a table and talk to somebody. Like,
100%.
You know what I mean? It's a little bit better.
I think for me, like going on a hike in the wilderness is almost the same as sitting at a bar talking to people.
Yeah, really.
It's almost just like, as long as I'm not doing it for work,
right,
and just meeting people just normal, I feel like I'm actually in a peaceful place.
That's incredible. So I'm wondering then, did you ever pursue musical performance as a writer and performer?
I did, yeah.
What was the main instrument, or all of the ones we mentioned?
Mostly in composition, playing guitar and singing.
Oh, cool.
I've had a few bands in my life.
That's kind of incredible. Did any of them take you to where you wanted to go?
Well, at a certain point, I found this a certain exhaustion in having to do it for other people. Music was something and is something that I love so much for myself that being required to do it for other people really got to me,
right,
which is why I kind of stepped away from it.
It almost becomes insincere in a sense, right?
Exactly.
Because you're like, well, I'm just playing the songs, but actually I'm not really in the mood right now.
I have the same thing with working a service bar. At my bar, it's like I'm making drinks for people that I don't see.
Yeah.
I love the physical movement of it and the precision and the need to become better every single time. But I think at this point, I'd rather just talk to some people and make a simple drink. I did a guest bartending shift recently, and they asked me what drink I was going to serve, and I asked them, how many cases of champagne do you have?
The perfect cocktail in
it
itself.
It was great, because I got to just meet and talk to everyone.
That's amazing.
And I made two other cocktails that were not champagne, but
right. But still, I get that.
I did the real bartending.
Yeah,
I got
absolutely.
to meet people and talk to people.
So when did So the thing is medicine, human bodies, they are composed of notes, too, bones, whatever kind of interstitial material you want to call it, right? But it's the same kind of concept as building a song, right? So for you, what was the moment where you really fully transitioned out of medicine mode, if you will, maybe pursuing to be a surgeon, as you mentioned, into the bartending or hospitality industry?
So it's really funny. You go and study medicine and medical school and all that, but they never teach you how to take care of people. You always learn how to see people as a technocrat would see a person. Like they're a piece of technology that you must rebuild to a certain extent. And hospitality was something more than that. It was actually taking care of people.
There's nuance too.
Yeah. So I think the moment that I switched over is when I decided to just wash dishes and be a barback for a year, because I wanted to be perfect at it.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a master at something, and I figured the most basic thing to be a master at is the thing that seems the easiest.
Wow.
Which is really hard, actually, because the second you decide you want to be really good at something, all of the little details that make it impossible show themselves.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you move efficiently behind a bar? Where do the glasses come from? How do you rebuild the machines to make them work? Like our cold draft machine, I rebuilt it to make it better. How do you fix something if it's broken? How do you pace everything so that you know you can get the ice to the bartender before they even ask? Just watching and listening and learning. So maybe I didn't transition entirely out of medicine yet, but it's become really... that is much more important to me.
Right. But the thing it's interesting for me is you seem so adaptable intellectually to things, right? So if you want to learn something, you do, and you want to learn it in a way that is not superficial. You want to learn it in a deep, masterful way. So then I wonder, what are you not capable of doing?
Oh, so many things.
Are you sure?
So many things.
I'm serious. Like, what do you think is an actual, maybe fatal flaw for you?
My ego.
Yeah?
Sure, like everybody else.
Sure.
And time. Time
management?
No, just like not enough of it.
I see, yeah.
I wish there was more of it somehow.
Yeah. Well, I suppose if there was a way to come up with some other wormhole, perhaps you're the right person for the job.
I've looked into it. There are some good theories. Einstein-Rosen bridges are really wonderful ideas.
Yes, it's amazing.
But yeah, I don't know. I think I've got a lot of flaws. Yeah, like anybody.
Yeah.
I think the secret is embracing those flaws and seeing that those are really important parts of who you are. They are the depth of you.
Sure.
Some people want to fix a problem that is... it's a very interesting concept to me that we want to go to therapy quite often because we think something's wrong with us.
Right.
Like American culture is very therapy-oriented. But there's an incredible amount of depth in having a problem. It actually is something that can it makes you who you are.
Sure.
And if you can accept that thing that's wrong with you, it can actually, you can use it to like work with people. Like my ego is a problem with me sometimes, but it is with my staff too.
Sure.
And they have all these things that get thrown at them, and because I have that flaw, I can see it in them, and I can guide them, and I can say, hey, like, you don't want to do this because it will take you this way.
Right.
And I've done that, and I can tell you that's not very helpful.
Do you find yourself to be a very compassionate and empathetic person?
Sometimes. That might also be a flaw of mine.
I had a feeling because sometimes there are these conflicts within us that we want to be creative and we want to also be analytical and be compositional. As musicians, it's a massive part of many of our egos.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just like cold and collected, right? It's just
I think I have to sometimes pull myself back and remember it takes other people more time to get somewhere than me. Sometimes,
right?
Which I'm not saying I'm not trying to say that in like an egotistical way. I know that can sound like really. I could sound like a bitch by saying that, honestly. But it is something that I can get to something sometimes faster than some. Not everybody, but some people, and I realize not everybody else can do that, and I get angry at them for not doing that. That
I think is the key.
Yeah.
You and I winking at each other and saying like, yeah, we know we're probably going to get a concept that's somewhat complex, perhaps faster than this guy over here, but I don't want to say that. Never, like, that's the problem, is that I don't care if I think I'm the smartest person in the room. which may be the case or may not.
I know I'm not.
I mean, there are some rooms that are pretty bad.
I've been in some rooms where I know I'm not. I live in a place that is full of very smart people.
Yeah.
I've had barbacks that worked for me that were getting PhDs at MIT in concepts that were so absolutely amazing and far out there that I looked at them and was like, oh my God, okay.
It's incredible.
So I'm okay with not being the smartest person.
Me too.
But I'm happy being one of the most agile mentally.
Yeah.
I like being able to transition mentally from one thing to another and see its depth. And that's something I think that's my life project, is to be better at that.
But you do, in a larger sense, you do love people.
I do very much. Yeah, I don't understand them.
That's the fun part
at
of it,
all.
though. Yeah.
And I think as I'm getting older, I'm realizing I understand them less and less.
So how does love figure into that picture then?
Love?
Are you
Love
able
is
to?
great.
Love is great. But
I'm in love. Wonderful.
Do they understand you?
As much as anybody can understand a person, yeah. I think love is more about rhythm.
Rhythm?
Yeah. I think ultimately my mind is more of a dancer. I think there are people that think like dancers, and there are people that think like whatever else, but in my mind, it's movement. My mind thinks in terms of movement.
Yeah.
And love is about finding somebody or something that can move in the same rhythm as you.
Yeah.
In the same pacing. So that's just a matter of them being able to dance with you appropriately, I guess.
That's amazing. I consider, like I mentioned before we started recording, in a sense to me this is a jazz improv.
Exactly.
I don't know where we'll go.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, because it's all about going there.
Exactly.
And that experience, right? Do you write much?
A lot. Every day.
Journaling, do you write for a
journaling,
blog?
A lot. And then I've been keeping a journal since I was a very little kid.
That's amazing.
And then I have some things I've written that maybe will get published one day or not. But who knows?
Going back to the ego thing, of which we both have nice, solid, protein-based egos, I think we both do. Do you have a voice worthy of publishing?
I don't know. I don't really know. I sometimes have a hard time with words because there's so many meanings behind anything you can say.
Right.
So I try to avoid it often to speak, if necessary, only.
Really? It's just intentional.
It's yeah, I mean, writing is fun, and I get lost in it sometimes, and I can just sit and write for hours and feel really happy and good.
Yeah.
But if it's worth publishing, I don't know if anything's actually worth publishing. I think it's just like you do it or you don't.
No, like that. I like that. Yeah.
I will probably try to publish something, probably fairly soon.
Do you think it would? Well, you probably already have a notion of what this may be: fiction, nonfiction.
So I've written a couple of fiction pieces that are pretty long, and I've had some ideas for them for most of my life. That will probably happen when I have more time to sit down.
Yeah.
But for the next 5 years, I don't want that yet. I've written a lot of stuff for my staff. It's funny you talk about writing. It's something I've been doing more or less my entire life.
Yeah,
like pretty intensively.
Well, because you have this way with words, you've obviously thought about the order of them. The syntax is really important, and it seems like you've crafted these thoughts in some sense before, you know? It's almost like these thoughts, how you would talk about life, how you would talk about Buddhism. Not in a rote kind of canned way, but just you've already been feeling it for years. So it comes
I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
It's really brilliant.
So English wasn't my original first language, so sometimes I think publishing written work is a little scary for me to think that I would be published in a language that I'm not an expert at.
What is your native tongue? So to
Spanish.
Spanish, okay.
But I speak a lot of French quite often.
Yeah.
So it's actually, I spend about an hour a day working on my French and about a half an hour a day on Japanese.
Wow.
So it's a hobby. That's my hobby.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes hard to think, what if I publish something in English? That would be very strange because I don't consider myself an expert. I have a hard time sometimes gathering words and putting them in an order.
Hard to believe, frankly. It really is. when you think about the medium, are you more a avid film goer or more a reader?
Oh, both.
Both.
I don't sleep very much. I have
Don't sleep very much?
Yeah, I have the wonderful disadvantage of only sleeping about 4 hours a night naturally.
Oh, man.
So I end up with a lot of alone time, which I often spend with an iPad and headphones watching every movie I can find in the world. So I'm a huge film buff.
Me too.
But I also really love reading. So in the mornings, reading is more of a morning thing for me.
I see.
And movies are more of a nighttime thing for me. So in an ideal world, I'd read a book in the daytime, do a bunch of stuff, and then at night watch a nice movie.
Your nightcap is a brilliant film.
Exactly. I like dramas and things that can unfold in the. I like watching. I like a melody.
Okay,
whether that melody is a song or a piece of work,
right,
of written work.
Anything in recent memory that you enjoyed watching?
I watch a lot of weird things.
I do too.
I like all over the place. Like, I just watched all the Harry Potters again for fun.
Because they're on Amazon Prime or something, right?
Yeah. On Hulu, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, they just dropped.
It's great. And then...
Something strange. What's something strange you've seen lately that perhaps no one would have heard?
I've just been trying to... there's this amazing old French movie came out not that long ago, actually. I guess it's not that old. A couple years ago. I think it's called Motor, The Motor, in English. I can't remember, but it's basically a guy in a limousine, and it has no story.
No?
He like goes through all this stuff, and it's just really weird. Like, he's a chauffeur one moment, and it's just watching this guy's life.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable. It's such a great movie. And there's another, my favorite movie of all time.
You do, so you can actually name clearly what your favorite is.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's a 6-hour movie. The Best of Youth.
The Best of Youth.
It's an Italian film, and it follows the story of these brothers who, from their teenage years, where they have this incredible, unbelievable incident that changes their lives with this girl who's mentally disabled, or who people believe is mentally disabled, all the way up into their adulthood, and it follows their entire life. And in the background is Italy changing and growing during the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and you see who they are and how the country behind them is shifted, and how they're changed by the country, and how they changed the country in a lot of ways.
You see the landscape physically change.
And to see these people grow, it's the best movie, I think, in the world.
It's incredible. Well, and it's comprehensive, too, so it does have a little bit of advantage that way.
It does, but I think even in terms of television, which now is very long and incredibly complicated, this is just a piece of work on its own.
Wow.
I think of the word work in French, like oeuvre. It's like...
The oeuvre? Is that
yeah. So I think this is like the best of that.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah, I need to check it. I mean...
It's hard to find.
I'll find it.
Yeah.
I have this weird fascination with 80s horror.
I love 80s horror.
So I've found stuff that, is real. So oh God, I'm going to go to
What's
wormhole.
his name? Jackson's original...
Peter Jackson?
Yeah.
Bad Taste?
Yeah,
it was great.
Amazing.
I found it at a bookstore one day before DVDs. This and Meet the Feebles, they were really expensive on VHS because no one gave a shit about Peter Jackson. Dead Alive's incredible, but no one knew about it, right?
Yeah.
I found Bad Taste. It's that alien flipping people off on the cover of it.
Yep.
It had 2 fingers because it edited it. And I found it for like $10 in Houston. I was like, this is the greatest.
That's amazing.
This is fucking like amazing find. But yes, so I'll find the movie.
All right. Yeah, you should. It's amazing.
I absolutely will. It's
life-changing. There's something that happens in the film that sometimes I am in a car going home at night and I'm like, why did that character do that? Yeah. I still think about it all the time.
Really?
Like, what motivated him? Like, you see his entire life, you see his actions and how one event changes him and makes him completely different than his brother. And you just, like, I still think, like, why?
Yeah.
Why did he do that?
Well, shit, if you're still thinking about it.
It's, like, I'm thinking about it right now.
I've got you thinking about it. Well, that's good. So drink, you said that you were just hinging on about 10 years there.
Just about, yeah.
This is a big chapter. 10 years of doing anything is a long time.
Yeah, we're celebrating our 10th year on October 2nd.
Do you think you're different right now than you were 10 years ago?
Yeah. I mean, when I started, I was I was a completely different person. I was
Really?
not calm. I was not collected. I was not confident in myself. I didn't know how to lead people. That wasn't even on my agenda.
Yeah.
I really just started with the idea of washing dishes and figuring out how to be good at that. And I think I might be okay at it now. I think, maybe.
Okay, is not
I'm
bad.
like one of the best barbacks you'll ever meet. I'm very proud of it.
That's great.
But yeah, it's a big chapter. And I think I'm starting to see other things that I'm going to start focusing on a little more.
Yeah.
I want my team to grow now. I want them to have more opportunities. So I'm working with partners to see what we can do and how we can. It's funny when you start to talk to people about your future. They give you all kinds of crazy advice, like, oh, you should just leave and go work for somebody else or go open your own thing. And I like history. I like building on history, and I want to do something that isn't completely separating me from the work I've done.
Yeah.
Because I've put so much of my life, and I've, like, lost a marriage, like, lost family members in my time at Drink, and it's shaped me and connected me to that place and what that place can do for others.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to give that to more people, and I want my team to be able to grow, and I want to give them more chances to shape others.
Is it, in a sense, being sentimental and nostalgic about this place?
Unfortunately, yeah. I'm a huge romantic.
Yeah, me too. But
it's the Venezuelan in me,
Yeah, the deep passion of the Venezuelan. I don't know what it is.
The magical thinking, right? The famous novels from like Borges and all those writers. Yeah,
Hopeless.
I think I might have the same kind of hopeless, magical thinking about
maybe
where
genetic.
I am.
It could be a Venezuelan lineage.
Think it's a really positive thing because it means that I can shape a new type of business idea.
Yeah.
Instead of just cutting off ties and growing separate, I can take the elements that I like and take the pieces that I like, and I think I've worked hard enough to demand what I want now, and just say this is what I'm going to do, and you can come with or not.
Yeah.
And that's something that I was not able to do before.
Today's been wonderful. So I put out on Facebook, which is a good way to communicate certain things. I said, hey guys, less than 12 to 20%, I think it's like 20%, less than 20% of the presenters at the conference here are women.
Yeah.
And I'm here to capture a really even pool of people to talk to. And I said, can people help me out? And then today is filled with some of the most amazing women in this industry. Pam's next, right?
Yeah, Pam is one of my
Elise was
very
early.
close friends.
I mean, I feel privileged to be in this room doing this and having this conversation with you. Do you ever think about that power and how maybe it is even more important for you as an intensely intellectual woman doing great work to set an example? Is there any pressure there?
Well, now. Honestly, like, I'm just trying to be as true to what I want to do and how I want to take care of people as possible.
Yeah.
I feel like as I've had opportunities, I feel even larger necessity to give that to others and find a way to share that with the people that are in my life and not in my life, I guess. It's funny, like, I wake up in the morning and I just do my job and I don't really think about that stuff at all because I'm just working. And it's always funny when I meet somebody who knows me and I'm really shocked by it and like kind of confused, like why would you care? I just take care of people. Like, it's okay.
That's the one thing I had a conversation this morning with someone who had met you and said she's so helpful. That was the thing, and I was like, well, I guess I work with that. I suppose it's an amazing trait to have. But you sound like you want the community to be great. You want your staff to be great.
We're all, well, okay, so Dan, who was it? Anyway, a lot of us are taught about hospitality and taking care of the guest.
Right.
And I'm trying to not think about guests anymore. I'm trying to think about who's in the room. there's energy being shared on both sides of the bar,
Right.
and little pieces of you get taken, and little pieces of them get taken and shared back and forth. It's a
Sure.
molecular exchange of like
Of course.
emotion and intellect in
Right,
a lot
right.
of ways, right? And connection. So it's opportunity. I want it to I want to grow those little bonds.
Yeah.
I'm thinking in science
Of
terms,
course.
but like, I want those little pieces of everything to go and grow and come off. Like when you make bubbles and they combine or
Yeah.
they separate, and I like that process, and I think I want more of that.
It's amazing.
And I don't know, I want to be the little fire that helps make sure it grows amongst all the big fires.
A catalyst in a way.
Catalytic.
Yeah. One of the things that struck me about drink in a time when, at least this was probably 2010 or 2011, probably, no bottles,
No bottles.
brand agnostic, which I love that
brands.
concept.
Yeah.
Intentional, obviously.
Yeah.
What's the main objective in doing that?
Connection. The bar is set up with as many corners as possible too.
Yeah.
So there's corners everywhere. There's nothing to distract you. There are no TVs. There are no bottles. It's just the bartender and the guest, and
Yeah.
the guests and the guests, and the bartenders and the bartenders. Everybody is just trying to connect. So get rid of all that other stuff.
You know, that's like curating a piece. It's like curating a museum. All you're
Right.
wanting to do is to create a stage for people to embrace things.
Right. And what you don't see on the background is the amount of work that goes into every piece of that.
Right.
For everything that you don't see as a guest, we have to work 3 times as hard to make sure you can have it.
Yeah, and you don't even, and it's funny because to your point, you're putting all this work to make sure that the absence is there, and because it's absence, no one ever knew it was gone.
Exactly.
It's an amazing
And
concept.
it's become this interesting thing in my mind where I'm a huge fan of architecture.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I learn a lot by reading about architecture. There's an amazing writer, amazing French writer who really changed the way that the world saw architecture, and he talks about the inside being represented by the outside.
Yeah.
So shape and form of what's inside affects the way a building is designed.
Yeah.
For restaurants and bars, it's a similar thing. The amount of warmth and welcoming and interesting things that you see reduces the need for hospitality.
Interesting.
So we have the opposite at drink. There's nothing there. So we have to do the opposite. We have to be above and beyond for hospitality. And so that balance is something that is really intriguing to me, and something that is like maybe one of the hardest parts about drink is we have to come to the table with more because we have less. The next bar might be a little fancier looking just because it's a lot of work.
Well, and you want to do something different too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I probably explore a different aesthetic, just for the sake of exploring.
Yeah, there
a
might be
different
something in mind too.
You know, normally I ask people, what's next? I'm not asking you that question. There is no way I want to know, because you could be a published author within the next year. You could probably put on another record if you wanted to. You certainly could open another bar. So this is just giving me a grab bag. We're going to let people figure this out and see what they see. It's exciting though, right?
Yeah, I think you'll definitely see my connection with France growing quite a bit, because that feels like real home to me.
Yeah. Well, was it an hour a day you said? Or
Every
half
day.
an hour? It's a
Yeah.
dedication and paying homage to this place.
You want actually the reason that one of the most revolutionary things that affected the way I thought. There's a great little place near my house where if on Pi Day 3.14, March 14th, if you came in and you knew a certain number of pi after, you got that many free pies every year.
Oh my gosh.
So
Don't.
I wanted to take them for everything. So every day I wrote on my mirror, I would look up what each number of pi was, and each day I would add a number. So I spent 2 minutes a day, every single day, for 365 days, writing another number on this mirror. And by the end, I had memorized so many numbers out. If I still remember it, I am not sure. I think
Was
I
it
can
a
only
full
go 4 hours.
365 that you remembered?
I think I got stage fright when I went to go talk to them, but I think I only ended up with something like 200.
Oh yeah, only as you like could.
But it's a lot of numbers to keep track of. I could write it out easier than I could say it because seeing it visually was the way that I learned.
Yeah.
But that practice of 2 minutes a day on something that you think is ubiquitous is absolutely incredible because it transforms you so much.
Yeah.
So I try to spend just a small piece of every day on one thing. And so for me, learning a language is fun because it changes the way I think. But at this point, I'm not really learning it anymore the same way. I've known French for a long time. It's more like perfecting it in a way and changing my mind to be in that space so that when I do interact, it's wonderful. Like I'm fluent in American Sign Language. We have so many deaf guests that come in and I get to take care of them and they get to have a normal experience that anybody else would have in a bar.
Yeah.
Because my staff knows how to take care of them because I've shown them that they're just people that speak a different way. And so they'll come up with pads of pencils and write down and have jokes, and these guys have become our regulars. And we have so many deaf kids. Like we have at least 10 deaf regulars just from this experience, and it was because I had the opportunity to learn a different thing about a culture.
Yeah.
And so that little couple minutes every single day transforms you into giving you a tool that you never thought you could have. So I'm a huge fan of it. Thank God for pie.
Man, I'm kind of hungry now actually thinking about pie. I got back from Key West last week.
Oh, nice.
I ate a piece of pie fucking every day.
That's awesome.
It's like key lime, well, but they say this is the best. So pie is certainly.
Wait, key lime's actually from Key West?
Yeah, well, it's just like eating a Philly cheese sandwich, right? It's like Philly cheesesteak, rather. Yeah, it's brilliant. Everybody does it a different way, and this and that. Yeah. Not a bad pursuit, mind you, getting a piece of pie.
Sounds good. It sounds like I might have to go to Key West.
It's not bad at all. Well, so this is my last question for you. And we'll kind of root this in France. I've been drinking a lot of cognac and armagnac.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Love grape distillates. Love brandies in general. So let's say you're sipping a fine armagnac. Yeah. Anywhere in the world, of course, it'd be great to drink it in armagnac. Doesn't matter where.
Okay.
And you can sit there, have a sip, and a conversation with anyone, living or deceased. Who might you love to wax poetic?
I hate this question so much.
I know, it's really open-ended.
It's the worst. Alexander the Great.
Yeah?
Yeah. So
he was attractive here, right?
He's amazing because he was trained by Plato, like the people, like that group of people, the Greeks, by his father forced them to train him, and he went to school that way, and then he traveled the world and tried to take over it to an extent because he had this like vision of creating some incredible grand continent where everybody could have a better life.
Yeah.
And then he came across elephants for the first time. Like, it's just such an impossible, unbelievable story that one person could have that huge of an impact and have come from a type of thinking that was so linear.
Yeah.
And so unique. Like, I think of the Greeks as thinking very melodically, and like they created those ideas for us.
Absolutely.
Right? So to get to talk to somebody who might have been in that core and in that world and then expressed it by trying to take over the world is just a remarkable thing. I guess I don't grasp why.
Sometimes it doesn't matter, it's like a guttural reaction.
Yeah.
That's why the question's hard in a sense. It's like, well, what should I say or what am I thinking? But guttural is always best.
But I think there's just so many people that are unbelievable that you could talk to, that you can have that same experience with that I get to every day. I think that's actually why I like my job so much.
Yeah.
I meet people and you never know who they are. Like I met some guy, he was this bigger guy in Boston. Like we're sitting at a bar together and talking, and it turned out he was like the star baseball player for the Red Sox. And I didn't know. I don't know much about sports.
Yeah, I don't know.
So to me, he was just like some guy, and we ended up having a small like friendship, not very close, but like I know him and he knows me, and we recognize each other. But it was because of that interaction of just talking to somebody at a bar that I met this guy who was really interesting from another country that also was a baseball player. It's something I don't care about at all, but it's an amazing person.
It is an incredible and serendipitous thing.
But you never know who that person on the other side is. In some field, people always ask me, like, it's not like my least favorite term, are you in the industry? It's like everybody's in an industry.
Yeah.
And if you get to know why or where they are in their industry, you learn so much from them. Like, you might be sitting next to a person who's not necessarily in the liquor industry, but maybe that's like the biggest person ever in like the, I don't know, car industry, and you don't even know it.
You can learn so much from everybody.
It's cool. It's they're all kind of trying to do similar things in their own way.
It's a brilliant sentiment, and it's quite an optimistic one and an uplifting one if you think about it.
Very romantic.
That a perfect note to end on, frankly.
Yeah.
How can you be more optimistic and romantic than really appreciating the people around you and never judging them and just expecting that, or rather having no expectations, just being open?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
a beautiful principle.
Oh, thanks.
So, Ezra, it's been amazing
It's been a
chatting
pleasure.
with you.
Thank you.
Really, really nice, and I can't wait to see what you do next, although I'm sure it will befuddle the hell out of me, and I'll have no idea exactly what it is.
I think it'll be basic.
Oh,
It'll
yeah,
be good.
of course you think that would be basic. It's for the rest of us.
Try
yeah.
it simple.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, there we have it. What do you guys think? Miss Ezra Star, the general manager of Drink Boston, an amazing bar, a deeply intellectual chat. Like I said, I felt like I was part of a jazz duo, improvisation at its best. We would zig one way, zag the other way, change tempos, change topics. I learned so much about art. I learned so much about Ezra. I learned a lot about myself. And sometimes these chats cause some reflection, some self-introspection. And it was just a wonderful, deeply, deeply cerebral and satisfying experience speaking with you, Ezra. Thank you so much for taking the time out. And thank you for listening to Show to V with Mike G. No matter how reticent you were to watch The West Wing, given its 7 seasons, it might be a bit of a time investment. You're going to do it. You'll probably like it. Or if you're thinking, man, Ready Player One had so many damn pop references, I don't know if I caught them all. Please keep dancing.